The following presentation is intended strictly for educational and entertainment purposes and does not constitute professional automotive, financial, legal, or investment advice. The automotive repair industry, vehicle depreciation curves, and the costs associated with maintaining complex mechanical systems are subject to significant market fluctuations, regional pricing differences within the United States, and the highly variable individual conditions of specific vehicles. The scenarios, historical trends, and mechanical case studies discussed throughout this presentation are meant to illustrate potential outcomes and industry practices. They should not be interpreted as absolute facts applying to every single vehicle or repair facility. Viewers must conduct their own thorough due diligence, consult with certified, independent automotive technicians, and speak with qualified financial advisors before making major financial decisions regarding vehicle purchases, extended warranties, or extensive repairs. We do not endorse any specific repair facilities, dealership networks, or aftermarket part manufacturers. Any financial figures, repair estimates, or total cost of ownership metrics presented are based on historical trends and aggregate industry data, which may not reflect your specific geographic location or the distinct mechanical history of your personal automobile. Always prioritize safety and professional consultation when dealing with complex, high-voltage, or highly pressurized automotive machinery. Imagine driving down the interstate on a crisp Tuesday morning. You are behind the wheel of a meticulously detailed, 5-year-old German luxury sedan. You purchased this vehicle on the used market just 6 months ago for what felt like an absolute financial triumph, securing a flagship model originally priced at nearly $100,000 for less than $40,000. The leather interior is pristine, the cabin is whisper quiet, and the prestige of the badge on the steering wheel provides a daily sense of accomplishment and status. Then, without warning, a soft chime echoes through the cabin. A yellow warning light illuminates on the digital dashboard, indicating a fault within the adaptive air suspension system. You do not panic. After all, it is a modern over-engineered machine. Perhaps it is just a minor sensor glitch or a software anomaly. You schedule an appointment at your local authorized dealership, hand over the keys to a sharply dressed service advisor, and take a seat in a pristine, climate-controlled waiting area complete with complimentary artisanal coffee, high-speed internet, and leather lounge chairs. 2 hours later, the service advisor returns, not with a simple sensor replacement, but with a detailed, multi-page invoice. The diagnosis requires the replacement of 2 adaptive air struts, a specialized pneumatic compressor, and the recalibration of the entire suspension network using proprietary factory software. The total estimated cost to get your vehicle safely back on the road? $8,500. This staggering figure represents nearly a quarter of the vehicle's current market value, instantly vaporizing any perceived savings from buying depreciated luxury. This scenario is not a rare anomaly or an exaggerated horror story constructed for dramatic effect. It is a daily reality playing out in service centers across the United States. According to comprehensive industry data tracking the total cost of ownership, maintaining a European or high-end domestic luxury vehicle over a 10-year period can easily cost twice as much as maintaining a standard Japanese economy car. The financial hemorrhage goes far beyond simple synthetic oil changes and premium tire rotations. We are talking about catastrophic depreciation curves intersecting with astronomical replacement parts pricing and exorbitant hourly labor rates. But this leads us to a fundamental, highly debated question that the luxury automotive industry actively discourages consumers from asking. Are you genuinely paying for superior engineering, aerospace-grade materials, and highly specialized elite mechanical labor? Or are you simply falling victim to an artificial luxury tax, systematically designed to subsidize the espresso machines, the massive loaner vehicle fleets, and the immense architectural overhead of the modern dealership model? What if the exact same repair, utilizing parts from the very same manufacturing plant in Europe, could be executed for a fraction of the cost, completely legally, and without sacrificing an ounce of safety or vehicular performance? Today, we are completely tearing the veil off the luxury auto repair industry. In this comprehensive step-by-step masterclass, we are going to meticulously dissect the exact mechanisms that drive up the cost of luxury auto repair in the United States, providing you with the ultimate analytical framework to navigate this complex market. If you currently own a premium vehicle, are contemplating purchasing a depreciated high-end car, or are simply tired of feeling financially paralyzed every time a dashboard light turns on, this deep dive is designed specifically to address that uncertainty. We will systematically break down the black box of automotive labor rates, exposing the vast, often unjustified chasm between the $250 per hour fee demanded by flagship dealerships and the substantially lower rates offered by independent, specialized European automotive shops. You will learn the critical money-saving distinction between original equipment manufacturer parts, original equipment parts, and aftermarket alternatives. We will demonstrate how a water pump stamped with the luxury automaker's logo can cost triple the price of the exact same water pump, built on the exact same assembly line by the exact same supplier, merely missing the brand insignia. Furthermore, we will thoroughly explore the concept of the engineering tax. Modern luxury vehicles are undeniable marvels of technological packaging, but this spatial efficiency comes with a severe financial penalty for the second and third owners. We will analyze historical trends in specific engineering case studies where seemingly minor components, such as a $50 engine temperature sensor or a plastic timing chain guide, are buried so deeply within the engine bay that accessing them requires the complete removal of the engine and transmission from the chassis. You will understand how a $50 part can rapidly transform into a $4,000 labor bill, and why certain model years are considered financial ticking time bombs by independent industry mechanics. We will also demystify the high barrier to entry created by proprietary diagnostic software. Dealerships maintain a virtual monopoly on certain types of electronic repairs simply because they hold the exclusive licensing to the computer systems required to sync a new electronic module to the vehicle's highly encrypted central network. By the conclusion of our analysis, you will possess a profound, behind-the-scenes understanding of the macroeconomic and mechanical realities of the luxury automotive sector. We will arm you with practical, historical data-driven strategies to potentially reduce your maintenance expenditures by thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your vehicle ownership. You will be equipped to walk into any repair facility, be it a glittering corporate dealership or a local independent garage, with the confidence to ask the right technical questions, demand transparent pricing breakdowns, and refuse unnecessary service upcharges. We are moving far beyond the surface-level generic advice of simply shopping around to provide a granular, architectural understanding of how the automotive repair economy actually functions behind closed bay doors. We will investigate the psychological hold that brand prestige has on the American consumer, and how service departments expertly leverage that prestige to inflate profit margins on routine maintenance. Whether you are driving an entry-level premium crossover or a flagship Grand Tourer featuring a twin-turbocharged 12-cylinder engine, the information presented today is intended to completely reframe your approach to automotive ownership. The ultimate goal is to transform you from a passive, uninformed consumer into an educated, strategic manager of a depreciating mechanical asset. This is not about cutting corners or sacrificing vehicle integrity. It is about achieving maximum mechanical reliability and safety without falling prey to heavily optimized pricing structures. Let us begin unraveling the complex, highly lucrative world of luxury automotive repair in the United States. To truly understand why a simple brake job on a luxury SUV can cost more than a mortgage payment, we must first examine the architecture of the modern dealership service department. When you pull your vehicle into the meticulously polished service bay of a high-end dealership in the year 2026, you are not merely paying for a mechanic's time. You are immediately absorbing a fraction of an immense multi-million-dollar overhead structure. Look around the environment. The soaring floor-to-ceiling glass windows, the complimentary gourmet cafe staffed by a dedicated barista, the fleet of brand-new loaner vehicles parked out back, and the massive climate-controlled facility itself do not pay for themselves through the sales of new cars alone. Historical trends within the automotive industry consistently demonstrate that the sales department of a dealership operates on relatively thin profit margins, often relying on manufacturer volume bonuses to remain profitable. The true financial engine of any luxury dealership, the division that keeps the lights on and generates the overwhelming majority of the net profit, is the service and parts department. This fundamental economic reality dictates every interaction you have from the moment you hand over your key fob. Consider the first person you interact with upon arrival. You are greeted by a service advisor, a professional who is impeccably dressed and highly trained in customer relations. It is a common misconception that the service advisor is a senior mechanic or a diagnostic technician. In reality, the service advisor is primarily a commission salesperson. Their income is heavily dependent on a base salary, robustly supplemented by a percentage of the total repair orders they generate. This structure creates an inherent conflict of interest. While they act as the liaison between you and the technician in the back, their financial incentive is to maximize the value of your repair ticket. They are trained to present recommendations based on mileage and time intervals, often pushing aggressive preventative maintenance schedules that exceed the manufacturer's own minimum requirements. Imagine a scenario involving a standard American consumer. Let us call him Michael, living in suburban Illinois in 2026. Michael drives a highly engineered 2020 Bavarian luxury sedan. He brings his vehicle to the authorized dealership for a standard synthetic oil change, an advertised loss leader designed specifically to get the vehicle onto a hydraulic lift. Once the car is elevated, the technician performs a multi-point inspection. The technician notes slight seepage around the oil filter housing gasket, a notoriously common issue on this specific engine family. The technician relays this to the service advisor. The service advisor then approaches Michael in the luxurious waiting room, presenting a formal, printed estimate. The advisor explains that the gasket is failing, and to prevent catastrophic engine failure and massive oil leaks down the road, the entire housing must be resealed immediately. The estimated cost for this preventative measure is $1,800. Michael, fearful of destroying his expensive vehicle, authorizes the repair. What Michael does not see is the breakdown of that $1,800. The physical rubber gasket itself, the actual part preventing the leak, costs roughly $35 at the parts counter. The remaining $1,765 consist of specialized dealership labor rates approaching $300 per hour, exorbitant markups on the necessary chemical cleaners, and an inflated book time. Book time is the standardized number of hours the manufacturer dictates a job should take. However, dealership technicians are highly skilled at beating the book. If the manual states the gasket replacement takes 6 hours, but the technician completes it in 3 hours utilizing specialized techniques or prior experience, the customer is still billed for the full 6 hours. The technician is paid for 6 hours, and the dealership profits immensely on the efficiency gap. This flat-rate payment system incentivizes tremendous speed, which can unfortunately sometimes lead to rush diagnostics or overlooked secondary issues, as the technician is rushing to move on to the next lucrative repair order to maximize their weekly paycheck. Now, let us contrast this high-pressure, high-overhead environment with the primary alternative for luxury vehicle owners: the independent European or luxury specialist shop. These businesses are typically situated in unassuming industrial parks, rather than prime retail real estate. You will not find a dedicated barista, and the waiting area might consist of a few modest chairs and a television from a decade ago. However, the absence of architectural grandeur directly translates to significantly lower operational overhead, which in turn drastically reduces the hourly labor rate. A highly reputable independent specialist in 2026 typically charges between $150 to $180 per hour, nearly half the rate of the flagship dealership. Let us look at a distinct case study involving another driver, Sarah, based in Texas. Sarah owns a complex 2018 British luxury SUV, featuring an intricate air suspension system and a supercharged V8 engine. She experiences a rough idle and a check engine light. The dealership diagnoses a failing high-pressure fuel pump and quotes her $3,400 for the replacement, insisting that only their factory-trained technicians possess the specific alignment tools required for the intricate repair. Sarah decides to seek a second opinion at an independent specialist renowned in her local community for servicing British vehicles. The independent master technician, who likely spent a decade working at a dealership before opening his own facility, performs the identical diagnostic sequence. He confirms the high-pressure fuel pump is indeed failing. However, his estimate is $1,600. How is this massive price disparity possible without sacrificing quality? The independent technician utilizes the exact same original equipment manufacturer pump. He orders it directly from the supplier that builds the part for the luxury brand, simply bypassing the dealership parts counter markup. The labor rate is dramatically lower, and the independent shop often utilizes real-world diagnostic times, rather than strictly adhering to inflated dealership book times. Furthermore, the myth of the exclusive special tool is rapidly deteriorating. In the year 2026, the aftermarket diagnostic industry has advanced exponentially. Independent shops invest heavily in incredibly sophisticated, third-party diagnostic computers that can perform 99% of the complex coding, module adaptations, and system bleeding procedures previously restricted exclusively to the dealership network. They have access to the same technical service bulletins, the same wiring diagrams, and the same mechanical torque specifications. By understanding this fundamental economic dichotomy, luxury vehicle owners can immediately begin making strategic choices about where their maintenance budget is allocated. Routine maintenance, suspension work, brake replacements, and even heavy mechanical engine repairs can almost always be executed by a qualified independent specialist at a fraction of the cost, completely legally, and without voiding any existing consumer protections or aftermarket warranties. The physical labor of turning a wrench on a German, British, or high-end domestic vehicle is not a closely guarded secret of the universe. It is a mechanical process that can be mastered by any dedicated, highly trained automotive professional outside the corporate dealership umbrella. However, before you completely write off the dealership service department as an outdated, unnecessary expense, you must understand a rapidly expanding, highly controversial tactic that luxury manufacturers are utilizing to claw back market share from the independent repair sector. While independent mechanics possess the tools and the talent to perform nearly any mechanical feat, the manufacturers have discovered a new method of control that relies entirely on microscopic lines of code, rather than physical nuts and bolts. They are actively constructing an invisible, impenetrable digital wall around the most critical components of your vehicle. What happens when your transmission fails, and replacing it requires a highly encrypted digital handshake that must be beamed via satellite directly from a corporate server in Stuttgart or Munich, a handshake that the manufacturer absolutely refuses to sell or provide to an independent mechanic. When your car is essentially a rolling computer network, physical tools are no longer enough, and the battle for the right to repair your own property is about to take a dramatic, highly expensive turn. To understand the severity of this digital wall, we must examine the concept of component protection, a relatively modern engineering philosophy that has fundamentally altered the landscape of automotive ownership. In the past, if a mechanical component failed, you simply sourced a replacement part, unbolted the broken unit, and bolted the new one into place. The vehicle was completely agnostic to the origin of the mechanical hardware, provided it fit the physical dimensions. Today, in the year 2026, a modern luxury vehicle is no longer just a collection of mechanical linkages. It is a highly sophisticated, rolling local area network. Every major system, and increasingly every minor accessory, is controlled by an independent computer module. These modules communicate continuously along a digital nervous system known as the Controller Area Network Bus. To prevent theft and arguably to maintain absolute control over the replacement parts market, luxury manufacturers began assigning unique, encrypted digital serial numbers to almost every electronic component on the vehicle. This means the hardware is digitally married to the specific vehicle identification number of your car on the assembly line. Let us observe the practical, highly frustrating application of this technology through a specific case study. Imagine a driver named David, living in coastal Florida. David drives a beautifully maintained 2022 German luxury sedan, equipped with highly advanced, adaptive LED matrix headlights. These lighting systems are engineering marvels, capable of dynamically dimming specific LED pixels to avoid blinding oncoming traffic, while keeping the rest of the road brightly illuminated. However, during a routine highway commute, a stray piece of debris kicks up from a construction truck and shatters the polycarbonate lens of the passenger side headlight assembly. The internal electronics are completely undamaged, but the housing is compromised. David takes the vehicle to an independent body shop. The technician informs him that the manufacturer does not sell just the outer plastic lens. The entire headlight assembly must be replaced as a single, sealed unit. The quote for a brand new factory original headlight from the local dealership parts department is an astonishing $3,200, completely excluding labor. Seeking to be a strategic manager of his finances, David locates an identical, perfectly functioning used headlight assembly from a specialized automotive recycler for only $600. The independent technician physically installs the used headlight into David's sedan. The physical fitment is perfect. The wiring harness clicks into place seamlessly. However, when David starts the engine, the new headlight remains completely dark, and the dashboard immediately illuminates with multiple lighting system malfunction warnings. The vehicle's central gateway computer has interrogated the newly installed headlight, read its embedded digital serial number, recognized that it does not match the original factory configuration, and actively severed power to the unit. The independent technician connects his advanced diagnostic tablet, attempting to introduce the new headlight to the car's network. He hits an impenetrable digital firewall. The software required to authorize this specific component marriage is locked behind a proprietary server portal, Accessible only by authorized dealership technicians utilizing factory-issued credentials. David is forced to have his vehicle driven to the dealership. The service advisor casually informs him that corporate policy strictly prohibits the coding or authorization of second-hand, recycled electronic components due to liability concerns. The perfectly functioning $600 recycled part is rendered entirely useless. David is left with no alternative but to authorize the purchase of the $3,200 new unit, plus the dealership's exorbitant labor rate simply to plug in a laptop and perform a 5-minute digital handshake. This scenario perfectly illustrates the invisible engineering tax levied on modern luxury car owners. Manufacturers frequently cite cybersecurity and the prevention of organized auto theft rings as the primary justification for implementing severe component protection protocols. While securing a vehicle against unauthorized electronic access is a valid engineering concern, historical trends heavily suggest that the secondary, highly lucrative outcome is the systematic monopolization of the repair ecosystem. By restricting the software tools necessary to authorize replacement parts, manufacturers effectively force consumers back into the highly profitable dealership service bays, completely neutralizing the competitive pricing traditionally offered by the independent repair market and the recycled parts industry. Let us examine another distinct scenario involving a highly critical drivetrain component. Consider Jessica, a resident of California, who owns a 2021 premium luxury crossover. At roughly 70,000 miles, the vehicle begins exhibiting harsh, erratic shifting behavior. An independent transmission specialist accurately diagnoses a failure within the transmission control module, the intricate internal computer that dictates the hydraulic shifting logic. The mechanical gears and clutches are in perfect condition. Only the localized computer brain has failed. The independent shop sources a brand new, original equipment manufacturer module directly from the Tier 1 supplier, bypassing the dealership parts counter markup. The technician expertly drops the transmission pan, replaces the valve body and the integrated module, and refills the specialized hydraulic fluid. However, upon attempting to start the vehicle, the engine simply cranks but refuses to fire. The vehicle's sophisticated immobilizer system, an anti-theft protocol designed to prevent the engine from starting without the correct transponder key, is deeply integrated into the transmission control module. Replacing the module requires a highly secure, real-time cryptographic exchange with the manufacturer's central servers in Europe. In previous years, independent shops could pay for expensive, temporary subscriptions to access these manufacturer portals. But by 2026, manufacturers have heavily restricted this access, citing new, stringent international cybersecurity mandates. The independent shop, despite possessing the mechanical expertise and the correct physical replacement part, is entirely locked out of the vehicle's security architecture. Jessica must pay a specialized towing company to flatbed her immobilized vehicle away from the independent specialist and directly to the local dealership. The dealership then charges her an additional 3 hours of specialized diagnostic labor, at nearly $300 an hour, merely to connect their proprietary laptop, log into the corporate server, and authorize the transmission module that the independent mechanic already physically installed. Jessica is effectively paying a massive ransom, simply to regain the digital rights to operate her own physical property. This escalating conflict is the central battleground of the modern right to repair movement. Consumer advocacy groups and independent automotive coalitions are fighting aggressive legislative battles against massive corporate lobbying efforts. Manufacturers are rapidly shifting away from the standardized, physical onboard diagnostic ports that have historically allowed any mechanic to plug in a scanner and read engine codes. Instead, they are aggressively pushing towards advanced vehicle telematics. Modern luxury cars are now wirelessly transmitting gigabytes of encrypted diagnostic data directly to the manufacturer's cloud servers via embedded cellular modems, completely bypassing the physical diagnostic port and essentially leaving the independent mechanic totally blind. The dealership knows exactly what is failing on your vehicle before you even notice a symptom, allowing them to proactively market highly profitable service appointments directly to your dashboard screen. As we analyze these historical trends and the systematic digitization of the automotive repair industry, a terrifying financial reality begins to emerge for the American consumer. If the physical parts are priced at exorbitant premiums, and the software required to install them is heavily restricted behind corporate firewalls, is the only viable financial strategy to simply lease these luxury vehicles and surrender them back to the bank before the original factory warranty expires? What exactly happens to the immense multi-billion-dollar secondary market when these heavily encrypted digital fortresses depreciate and become third or fourth-hand vehicles owned by individuals who cannot possibly afford dealership labor rates? And more importantly, what if I told you that in response to this corporate lockdown, a highly sophisticated, hidden sub-industry has emerged? A massive gray market operating entirely in the shadows, utilizing reverse-engineered software patches, cloned dealership laptops, and unauthorized server emulators developed by international hackers to forcefully bypass these exact firewalls. A digital underground where your local, trusted independent mechanic is slowly being forced to become a software pirate just to successfully change a dead battery. Let us examine that dead battery scenario, as it perfectly illustrates the absurdity and the sheer necessity of this digital underground. Imagine, if you will, a standard automotive battery. Historically, replacing it required a 10mm wrench, a pair of safety glasses, and 5 minutes of manual labor in your own driveway. But in the year 2026, if you own a late-model Bavarian or British luxury sedan and attempt this seemingly simple swap, you will likely trigger a cascading series of electrical failures. Modern premium vehicles feature an intelligent battery sensor mounted directly to the negative terminal cable. As the chemical composition of a lead acid or highly advanced absorbent glass matte battery ages and degrades over several years, the vehicle engine control module incrementally increases the charging voltage output from the alternator to compensate for that internal resistance. When you physically install a fresh, brand new battery without digitally registering that replacement within the computer network, the alternator continues to bombard the new unit with an excessively high voltage rate intended for a dying, heavily degraded battery. The potential outcome is a severely overcharged electrical system that can literally boil the internal acid, permanently destroy the new internal cells within a matter of months, and potentially fry highly sensitive microprocessors throughout the cabin. To prevent this catastrophic failure, the mechanic must plug into the onboard diagnostic port and execute a specific software routine to tell the computer that a new battery exists, and the charging algorithms must be reset to their factory baseline. The official dealership software required to perform this rudimentary task, alongside vastly more complex module adaptations and system recalibrations, costs an absolute fortune. A licensed, factory-supplied diagnostic laptop system, coupled with the mandatory annual subscription to the manufacturer's secure servers, can easily exceed $20,000 a year for a single luxury brand. If an independent shop in suburban Pennsylvania wishes to legitimately service a variety of German, British, and Italian luxury brands, legally acquiring the official software for every single manufacturer becomes a catastrophic, potentially business-ending overhead expense. It is a financial barrier to entry deliberately designed to starve the independent repair sector of the tools they absolutely require to stay in business. This immense financial barrier has predictably birthed a thriving, highly sophisticated gray market ecosystem. Enter the complex world of cloned multiplexers and cracked diagnostic software. Independent technicians, desperate to service their customers efficiently without being forced to send them back to the expensive dealership network, frequently turn to international automotive coding forums and unauthorized third-party vendors. They purchase generic, ruggedized laptops preloaded with reverse-engineered, heavily modified versions of the exact same proprietary software used by the authorized factory dealerships. These cracked software suites are specifically designed to completely bypass the official manufacturer servers. They utilize specialized server emulators, often coded and hosted in jurisdictions with highly relaxed intellectual property laws, to trick the vehicle into believing it is communicating directly with the corporate headquarters in Europe or Detroit. Consider a practical case study involving a homeowner named Robert residing in Ohio in the year 2026. Robert drives a highly complex 2021 luxury Grand Tourer and suddenly experiences a total failure of the anti-lock braking system hydraulic pump. The official dealership provides a printed estimate quoting him $4,800, heavily emphasizing that the new safety-critical pump must be painstakingly coded to the vehicle chassis using their exclusive factory portal. Robert takes his Grand Tourer to a highly regarded independent European automotive specialist. The independent specialist sources the exact same hydraulic pump from the original equipment manufacturer for a fraction of the retail price. But to execute the final digital handshake and marry the part to the car, the mechanic pulls out a laptop running a clone version of the manufacturer diagnostic suite. He plugs a counterfeit communication interface into the diagnostic port of Robert's vehicle. In mere minutes, the patch software artificially generates the required cryptographic security token, forces its way past the local firewall, and successfully registers the new braking module. Robert saves nearly $2,000, and the independent shop retains a loyal customer who can safely return to the highway. However, operating within this digital underground carries immense, deeply hidden risks that consumers are rarely aware of. When a technician utilizes unauthorized, pirated software to flash a critical control module, they are walking a technological tightrope without a safety net. If the wireless internet connection drops for a microsecond, if the cloned physical interface suffers a microscopic voltage spike, or if the hacked software contains a hidden coding error, the control module can become completely corrupted during the flashing process. In automotive terminology, the module is bricked. It is instantly transformed from a highly sophisticated computer brain into a completely useless, expensive paperweight. Unlike authorized dealership technicians who can simply submit a corporate warranty claim to the manufacturer if an official software flash unexpectedly fails, the independent mechanic using gray market tools is entirely, legally liable for the cost of the destroyed component. The potential outcomes of a failed gray market programming session can instantly erase any financial savings the consumer initially enjoyed, leading to tense legal disputes and thousands of dollars in collateral damage. This technological Cold War is exactly why historical trends surrounding the right to repair movement are so intensely critical for American consumers to monitor and understand. Lawmakers have repeatedly attempted to level the playing field, proposing legislation that mandates manufacturers must provide independent repair facilities and individual owners with fair, reasonably priced access to the exact same diagnostic data and software tools available to their franchise dealership networks. Yet, the luxury automotive industry routinely discovers highly complex, perfectly legal loopholes. When state legislation demanded open access to physical diagnostic ports, manufacturers aggressively pivoted their engineering architecture to wireless telematics, sending data directly to the cloud and effectively locking independent shops out of the real-time data stream. They argue vehemently before congressional committees that opening these digital gateways to third-party mechanics inherently compromises the fundamental cybersecurity of the entire vehicle fleet, leaving highly automated, internet-connected cars vulnerable to malicious remote hacking. While this massive battle over software rights, intellectual property, and digital ownership continues to escalate in courtrooms and legislative chambers across the country, an even more insidious financial trap is hidden physically beneath the hood of your luxury vehicle. The digital firewalls and exorbitant software licensing fees are merely the modern, electronic methods of inflating your repair bills. To truly grasp the total cost of ownership, we must briefly step away from the glowing laptop screens and physically examine the actual, raw mechanical engineering of these magnificent machines. We have to look at the forged metal, the injected plastic, and the incredibly tight, virtually inaccessible packaging of the modern engine bay. Because while the software might artificially lock you out of a specific repair, it is the deliberate, often baffling mechanical design choices that dictate exactly why the components are systematically failing in the first place. What happens when elite engineers prioritize rapid assembly line speed and maximum spatial efficiency over long-term mechanical serviceability and durability? The answer lies in a highly controversial manufacturing philosophy that literally requires the complete removal of the entire engine block and transmission assembly just to replace a seemingly insignificant, $50 piece of molded plastic. This is the harsh mechanical reality of the modern engine-out service, a phrase that strikes absolute terror into the hearts of second-hand luxury vehicle owners. To comprehend how a piece of plastic can trigger a five-figure labor bill, we must step onto the assembly line in Stuttgart, Munich, or Coventry and analyze the fundamental priorities of the engineers designing these modern power plants. On the pristine, highly automated floors of modern manufacturing plants, the absolute priority is assembly speed and spatial packaging. A modern flagship luxury sedan requires massive horsepower to move its heavy, sound-deadened chassis. To achieve this, manufacturers utilize large displacement V8 or highly complex inline-six engines augmented by dual turbochargers, massive liquid-to-air intercoolers, hybrid electric motors, and extensive emissions equipment. All of this highly sophisticated machinery must be crammed into an engine bay designed with strict pedestrian safety impact regulations and aerodynamic profiles in mind. There is literally zero negative space remaining. When the vehicle is being built at the factory, the entire drivetrain is assembled on a specialized robotic jig and hydraulically mated to the chassis from below in less than 60 seconds. The engineers are optimizing for this specific 60-second window, They are fundamentally not concerned with the human mechanic, who will have to extract these components 80,000 miles later. Consider a specific, well-documented historical trend regarding engine timing architecture. For decades, the timing chain, which is the critical heavy-duty metal chain that synchronizes the top half of the engine with the bottom half, was mounted at the absolute front of the engine block directly behind the radiator. If the plastic guides tensioning that chain eventually wore out due to friction, a mechanic could simply remove the front bumper, take off the radiator, and access the components from the front. It was a reasonable single-day repair. However, to shorten the overall length of the engine and improve the front-to-rear weight distribution of the vehicle for superior cornering dynamics, European engineers made a highly controversial mechanical decision. They moved the entire complex timing chain assembly to the absolute rear of the engine block, sandwiching it entirely between the back of the engine and the steel firewall of the passenger cabin. Imagine, if you will, a case study involving a commercial real estate agent named Thomas, living in Seattle, Washington in the year 2026. Thomas purchases a stunning, heavily depreciated 2018 German luxury SUV powered by a twin-turbocharged V8 engine. At 90,000 miles, he begins hearing a distinct, harsh metallic rattling noise for exactly 3 seconds every time he starts the engine in the morning. He takes the vehicle to an independent master technician. The diagnostic outcome is definitive. The plastic timing chain guides, subjected to immense mechanical friction and extreme oil temperatures over 8 years, have become utterly brittle and shattered. The slack metal chain is now violently slapping against the internal aluminum engine block upon startup. If that chain jumps a single gear tooth, the internal pistons will violently collide with the valves, instantly and completely destroying the entire engine. The replacement plastic guides themselves cost roughly $75 at the parts counter. But because the factory engineers placed this critical wear item practically inside the dashboard, there is absolutely zero physical clearance to remove the rear engine timing covers. The technician solemnly informs Thomas that the only physically possible method to access these $75 plastic rails is to completely drop the entire powertrain out from underneath the vehicle. This procedure involves placing the heavy SUV on a commercial hydraulic lift, securely disconnecting the steering column linkage, severing and evacuating the high-pressure air conditioning lines, draining the entire engine coolant system, unbolting the heavy steel front subframe, disconnecting the front drive axles, carefully unplugging over 100 delicate electrical wiring harnesses, and finally utilizing a specialized hydraulic powertrain table to lower the massive engine, transmission, and transfer case assembly as one single continuous unit onto the shop floor. This painstaking, highly technical disassembly process takes a master mechanic 2 full days just to reach the broken plastic parts. Once the new guides are meticulously installed and the engine timing is perfectly synchronized using proprietary locking tools, the entire terrifying process must be perfectly reversed without pinching a single wire or cross-threading a single bolt. The standardized book time for this specific engine-out service routinely exceeds 30 hours of continuous labor. Even at a highly competitive independent rate of $180 an hour, Thomas is facing a labor bill approaching $5,400, simply to replace $75 worth of molded injection plastic. The potential outcomes of deferring this maintenance are catastrophic, leaving the consumer trapped in a high-stakes financial hostage situation where fixing the car costs a fortune, but ignoring the problem guarantees total mechanical annihilation. This extreme packaging density leads to another devastating historical trend in luxury auto repair: the rapid, catastrophic thermal degradation of internal engine components. In their relentless pursuit of eliminating turbo lag and maximizing instantaneous throttle response, luxury automakers pioneered a mechanical configuration known as the hot V setup. Traditionally, turbochargers were bolted to the outside edges of the engine block, where ambient airflow entering the front grille could help dissipate the immense heat they generate. In a hot V configuration, the engineers take 2 glowing red-hot turbochargers, capable of spinning at over 120,000 revolutions per minute and reaching temperatures exceeding 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit, and bury them directly inside the central valley of the V8 engine, effectively trapping them beneath a plastic acoustic engine cover. This packaging creates an extraordinarily hostile microclimate within the engine bay. It functions as a literal convection oven. Over several years of enduring thousands of extreme thermal cycles, heating up to blast furnace temperatures during a highway commute and slowly radiating that heat while parked in a garage, the ambient temperature violently attacks every surrounding component. The heavy-duty rubber engine coolant hoses become rigid and snap like dry twigs under the slightest pressure. The plastic coolant expansion tanks form microscopic stress fractures and randomly burst, dumping highly pressurized boiling fluid all over the highway. The specialized rubber valve cover gaskets bake continuously until they turn into brittle glass, resulting in massive oil leaks that drip directly onto the scorching hot turbocharger exhaust manifolds, creating a highly dangerous, noxious smoke and a severe underhood fire hazard. The manufacturer is completely aware that these materials will inevitably fail under this immense thermodynamic stress. But historical trends indicate that these components are mathematically engineered to survive just slightly past the original 4-year, 50,000-mile factory warranty period. This is the exact moment the vehicle is typically returned from its initial corporate lease and auctioned to a secondary owner, who is completely unaware of the thermal time bomb ticking beneath the hood. You might logically be wondering how elite automotive engineers can legally justify utilizing materials like basic rubber and standard injection-molded plastic in areas subjected to such extreme mechanical friction and catastrophic thermodynamic stress. Why not simply manufacture these critical cooling junctions and timing guides out of forged aluminum, brass, or high-tensile steel to ensure they last the realistic lifetime of the vehicle? The answer goes far deeper than simple cost-cutting on the assembly line. It involves a massive industry-wide philosophical shift in how vehicle longevity is officially defined and a highly coordinated, incredibly deceptive marketing campaign designed to actively prevent you from properly maintaining your own mechanical property. Because while they are building these hyper-complex engines to run hotter and tighter than ever before in automotive history, they are simultaneously telling the American public a highly dangerous, incredibly lucrative lie about the vital fluids required to keep them alive. And it starts with a specific phrase explicitly printed in your owner manual that is actively destroying transmissions across the country. The phrase explicitly printed in your owner manual that is actively destroying transmissions across the United States in the year 2026 is lifetime fluid. This single, deceptively simple term is perhaps the most effective tool in the luxury automotive manufacturer's arsenal for ensuring that a vehicle reaches a state of total mechanical obsolescence shortly after the original warranty expires. To understand the gravity of this engineering deception, we must first define what the manufacturer actually means by the word lifetime. In the context of a corporate boardroom in Germany or Japan, a vehicle's lifetime is not measured in decades or hundreds of thousands of miles. It is officially defined as the duration of the original factory warranty, typically 4 to 5 years or 50,000 to 60,000 miles. Once that period ends, the manufacturer has no financial or legal incentive to ensure the vehicle continues to function. In fact, historical trends suggest that the failure of major components on a 6-year-old vehicle is a net positive for the manufacturer, as it encourages the consumer to return to the dealership to purchase a new model. Consider the mechanical reality of an automatic transmission. These are not static boxes of gears. They are incredibly complex hydraulic computers containing hundreds of moving parts, microscopic fluid passages, and friction-based clutch packs. As the transmission operates, the internal clutches naturally wear down, shedding microscopic particles of friction material and metal into the fluid. Furthermore, the fluid itself is subjected to extreme thermal stress. In a heavy luxury SUV used for towing or aggressive highway commuting in the heat of a Texas summer, internal transmission temperatures can frequently exceed 220 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, the chemical additives in the fluid, the detergents, the friction modifiers, and the anti-foaming agents begin to oxidize and break down. The fluid loses its viscosity, turns from a healthy translucent red to a burnt, gritty black, and eventually fails to provide the hydraulic pressure required to hold the clutches together. Imagine a driver named Mark living in Atlanta, Georgia. Mark owns a high-performance 2019 luxury sedan, equipped with a world-class 8-speed automatic transmission. He reads his owner manual religiously, which states that the transmission fluid is a lifetime fill and requires no maintenance under normal driving conditions. Mark follows this advice perfectly. By the time the odometer clicks over to 85,000 miles in early 2026, the car begins to exhibit a slight shudder when shifting from second to third gear. Over the next month, the shudder transforms into a violent jolt. Mark takes the vehicle to the dealership. The technician performs a diagnostic scan and discovers the fluid is heavily contaminated, and the internal solenoid valves are clogged with debris. Because the dealership follows the manufacturer's lifetime protocol, they do not offer a repair or a specialized fluid flush. Instead, They present Mark with an estimate for a complete transmission replacement. The cost is $12,000 for a factory remanufactured unit and 18 hours of labor. What the manufacturer failed to mention to Mark is that the company that actually built the transmission, a third-party engineering giant like ZF or Eisen, explicitly recommends changing the fluid and the integrated filter every 50,000 to 60,000 miles to ensure longevity. By following the car manufacturer's lifetime fill marketing rather than the transmission builder's technical specifications, Mark unknowingly participated in the slow, systematic destruction of his own drivetrain. This is a classic case study in planned obsolescence. If Mark had spent $500 on a preventative transmission service at 60,000 miles at an independent specialist, he could have potentially avoided a $12,000 catastrophe at 85,000 miles. The potential outcome of believing the lifetime fluid myth is almost always a total loss of the vehicle's primary value once it enters the secondary market. This philosophy of neglected maintenance extends to the very lifeblood of the engine, the oil. In an effort to lower the advertised total cost of ownership for initial lessees, luxury manufacturers have aggressively pushed oil change intervals further and further apart. In the year 2026, it is common to see dashboard monitors suggesting 15,000 or even 18,000 miles between oil changes. While modern synthetic oils are undeniably superior to the conventional lubricants of the past, they are not miraculous. In high-performance, turbocharged engines, the oil is not just a lubricant. It is a coolant for the turbocharger bearings, which can spin at speeds exceeding 100,000 revolutions per minute. When oil is left in an engine for 15,000 miles of stop-and-go American city traffic, it becomes saturated with carbon deposits, fuel dilution, and acidic combustion byproducts. These contaminants eventually form a thick, gelatinous substance known as engine sludge. This sludge begins to restrict the microscopic oil galleries that feed the variable valve timing system and the hydraulic tensioners for the timing chains we discussed previously. When the oil flow is restricted, the metal components begin to grind against each other without a protective film. Historical trends in the repair industry show a massive spike in premature engine failures in luxury vehicles where the owners strictly followed the extended 15,000-mile intervals. Independent master technicians, who see the internal wreckage of these engines every day, almost universally recommend a 5,000-mile interval regardless of what the digital dashboard monitor claims. They understand that oil is cheap, but an aluminum engine block featuring plasma-sprayed cylinder liners is extraordinarily expensive to replace. To make matters worse, the physical design of modern luxury vehicles is being altered to actively discourage even the most basic DIY maintenance. In many 2026 models, the traditional oil dipstick has been completely deleted. You can no longer manually check the level or the color of your oil to see if it is burning off or becoming contaminated. You are forced to rely entirely on an electronic sensor and a digital display on the infotainment screen. If that sensor fails, you could be driving a dry engine without ever knowing it until the pistons seize. Even the oil filters are being moved to increasingly difficult locations, sometimes requiring the removal of aerodynamic belly pans secured by 20 individual plastic clips and specialized Torx bolts just to reach the filter housing. This brings us to a critical realization about the United States luxury auto market. The cost of repair is not just high because the parts are expensive. It is high because the maintenance schedules are a minefield designed to lead you toward a major mechanical failure. The industry has effectively shifted from a model of mechanical reliability to a model of subscription-based ownership, where the vehicle is intended to be used and discarded. But there is a group of people who have found a way to beat this system. They aren't mechanics and they aren't software hackers. They are a specific type of data-driven enthusiast who has discovered that the secret to affordable luxury ownership isn't about how you fix the car when it breaks. It's about knowing exactly which specific models and which specific production months are mathematically destined to fail before you ever sign the title. Because while most luxury cars are financial traps, there are a handful of outliers that are built with a level of over-engineering that the manufacturers now deeply regret. The question is, can you spot the difference between a high-end masterpiece and a high-end lemon before the check engine light tells you the truth? The answer lies in a hidden database of internal manufacturer technical service bulletins that were never intended for the public eye. To understand the true risk profile of a luxury vehicle in the United States in 2026, one must move beyond the glossy brochures and delve into the Technical Service Bulletins, or TSBs. These documents are the internal communications sent from the manufacturer to the dealership service departments, detailing known mechanical defects, software glitches, and official repair procedures for problems that are frequently reported, but do not yet rise to the level of a federally mandated safety recall. While a recall is a public admission of a safety hazard, a TSB is often a quiet acknowledgement of a fundamental engineering flaw. For the savvy consumer, these documents represent a roadmap of exactly what will fail on a specific vehicle between 50,000 and 100,000 miles. Historical trends suggest that vehicles with an unusually high volume of TSBs regarding powertrain or electrical architecture are statistically more likely to suffer from the catastrophic repair costs we have been discussing. Imagine a potential buyer named Marcus living in Phoenix, Arizona. Marcus is looking at a high-performance 2021 luxury sedan. On the surface, the car has a clean history report and looks impeccable. However, if Marcus were to look at the TSB database for that specific model year, he might find a bulletin regarding a specific plastic coolant flange that is prone to cracking under the extreme desert heat. The TSB outlines a revised part made of a slightly different composite material, but the manufacturer only covers the replacement if the original part fails within the warranty period. Because the vehicle Marcus is looking at is just out of warranty, that $50 plastic flange is now a $1,500 liability sitting in his driveway, waiting for the first temperature spike to fail. By analyzing TSB data, Marcus can identify that certain production months in 2021 utilized a different supplier for these flanges, potentially avoiding the problematic batches entirely. This level of data-driven analysis leads us to the concept of the masterclass outlier. In every decade of automotive manufacturing, there are a handful of luxury vehicles that were, quite by accident, over-engineered to a degree that makes them more reliable than many economy cars. These are the vehicles that independent mechanics actually buy for themselves. They often feature an older, more proven engine design that was paired with a modern, high-quality transmission right before the manufacturer switched to a more complex, less reliable turbocharged or hybrid system. Historical trends in the American used car market show that these specific unicorns maintain their value far better than their peers because the repair community knows they are fundamentally robust. Consider the case study of a specific Japanese luxury flagship from the early 2010s compared to its German rivals of the same era. While the German vehicles featured cutting-edge air suspensions and twin-turbocharged engines that required engine-out services by 80,000 miles, the Japanese flagship utilized a naturally aspirated V8 and a traditional coil spring suspension. In 2026, you will still see these Japanese luxury sedans on the road with 300,000 miles on the original powertrain, requiring nothing more than routine fluid changes and the occasional alternator replacement. The potential outcomes for an owner of such a vehicle are vastly different from someone trapped in a cycle of high-frequency electronic failures. The cost of repair is worth it here because the repairs are infrequent and predictable. However, even with a robust vehicle, the American consumer faces a massive hidden cost that is often overlooked in the total cost of ownership: the specialized parts supply chain. In the United States, luxury parts distribution is a highly optimized, high-margin business. When a part is labeled as a luxury component, it often travels through a different logistics network than standard automotive parts. Dealerships rarely stock large inventories of complex mechanical parts, preferring a just-in-time delivery model. If your 2023 luxury crossover needs a specialized high-voltage battery coolant heater, that part might only be stocked in 3 regional warehouses across the entire country. This scarcity creates a pricing floor that is virtually impossible to bypass. Historical trends in parts pricing show that as a vehicle ages, the price of its specialized components often increases rather than decreases. As the volume of vehicles on the road drops, the manufacturer produces fewer replacement parts, leading to higher per-unit costs. A headlight assembly that cost $2,000 when the car was new might cost $3,000 5 years later simply because it has become a low-volume specialty item. This is the inverse of the economy car market, where a massive aftermarket of third-party manufacturers drives part prices down over time. In the luxury world, specialized sensors and trim pieces are often protected by patents that prevent third-party companies from producing affordable alternatives for up to 20 years. Imagine another scenario with a character named Elena in Chicago. Elena owns a 2020 luxury SUV with a panoramic glass roof. A hailstorm in the spring of 2026 shatters the forward glass panel. Because the glass features integrated ultraviolet coatings and a specialized acoustic interlayer, the part is only available through the manufacturer. There are currently 0 aftermarket alternatives, because the production process for that specific curvature of glass is proprietary. Elena is quoted $4,000 for the glass alone, plus 12 hours of labor to remove the entire interior headliner to access the mounting points. If Elena had been driving a standard mid-sized SUV, a local glass shop could have replaced the entire roof for under $1,000 using a high-quality aftermarket equivalent. The reality of luxury auto repair in the United States is that you are often paying for the privilege of a closed ecosystem. From the TSBs that reveal hidden flaws to the proprietary parts that cannot be replicated, the system is designed to maintain a high cost of entry. But even with these challenges, there is a segment of the repair industry that is undergoing a massive transformation. We are seeing the rise of a new type of specialist, the component-level repair technician. These individuals are moving away from the dealership's philosophy of replace everything and are instead using precision tools to repair the specific microscopic failure within a $3,000 module. This shift is creating a massive divide in the repair market. On one side, you have the dealership, which will charge you $5,000 for a new steering rack because a $5 internal sensor failed. On the other side, you have the specialized independent who will disassemble the rack, solder in a new sensor, and charge you $800. But finding these specialized technicians is becoming increasingly difficult as the complexity of the vehicles outpaces the training available to the general labor force. What happens when the only person who knows how to fix your vehicle's specific electronic fault is 3 states away, and the dealership refuses to help you because they would rather sell you a new car? The logistics of luxury repair are becoming just as expensive as the parts themselves, and it is forcing many owners to consider a radical new alternative that was unthinkable a decade ago. It involves a specific type of insurance product that isn't actually insurance, and it is either the greatest financial shield for a luxury owner or the most expensive mistake you will ever make. It is time to look at the murky, high-stakes world of the third-party extended warranty and why in 2026, the fine print is more important than the coverage itself. To truly understand the third-party extended warranty market in the United States in the year 2026, we must first address a fundamental legal distinction. These products are almost never legally classified as insurance. Instead, they are officially termed service contracts. This distinction is critical because insurance companies are heavily regulated by state-level commissioners who mandate specific capital reserves and fair payout practices. Service contracts, however, often operate in a much more flexible regulatory environment. For many luxury vehicle owners, these contracts represent a psychological shield against the $4,000 alternator or the $8,000 suspension failure we have been analyzing. But historical trends within the automotive industry reveal that these contracts are meticulously engineered financial products designed to maximize the profit of the administrator, not necessarily to ensure your vehicle is returned to the road in a timely manner. Imagine a driver named Christopher living in suburban New Jersey. Christopher recently purchased a high-performance 2020 luxury sedan with 60,000 miles on the odometer. Fearful of the legendary repair costs associated with this specific German brand, he pays $5,000 for a comprehensive 4-year, 50,000-mile extended service contract from a reputable third-party provider. 6 months into his ownership, the vehicle's active roll stabilization system, a complex hydraulic network that prevents body lean in corners, suffers a catastrophic internal leak. The local dealership provides an estimate of $6,500 for the repair. Christopher feels a surge of relief, believing his $5,000 investment in the service contract is about to pay for itself in a single visit. However, the reality of the claims process begins to unfold. The service contract administrator does not simply authorize the repair based on the dealership's diagnosis. Instead, they initiate a multi-step verification process designed to find any possible reason to deny the claim. First, they demand a complete, line-item service history of the vehicle from the date of its original manufacture. If Christopher cannot prove that every single oil change, fluid flush, and inspection was performed at the exact mileage interval specified by the manufacturer, the administrator can claim that the mechanical failure was caused by owner negligence rather than a defect in materials. Even if the service history is perfect, the administrator may then exercise their right to send a third-party physical inspector to the dealership. This inspector's job is to look for any signs of aftermarket modifications, such as non-factory wheels or a slightly different air filter, which can be used as legal grounds to void the entire contract. In Christopher's case, the inspector discovers that the hydraulic fluid in the system is slightly discolored. The administrator denies the claim, arguing that the failure was a pre-existing condition or the result of a lack of preventative fluid maintenance, despite the manufacturer's manual claiming the fluid was a lifetime fill. Christopher is now out the $5,000 he paid for the contract and is still responsible for the $6,500 repair bill. This scenario is a classic case study in the fine print of the luxury service contract industry. The potential outcomes of these contracts range from total financial protection to a complete loss of the initial premium, and historical trends suggest that high payout claims on complex luxury systems are the most aggressively contested by contract administrators. Another critical factor to consider is the labor rate cap. In the year 2026, many third-party service contracts include a hidden clause that limits the hourly labor rate they will pay to a repair facility. If the contract caps labor at $150 per hour, but your local luxury dealership charges $280 per hour, you are legally responsible for paying the $130 difference for every single hour of the repair. On a complex 30-hour engine-out service, this hidden gap can cost the consumer nearly $4,000 out of pocket, even if the claim is officially approved. Furthermore, many contracts specify that the administrator has the right to source used or refurbished parts, rather than brand new original equipment. If your luxury vehicle requires a specialized steering rack, the administrator may force the mechanic to install a salvaged unit from a junkyard to save costs, potentially compromising the long-term reliability of the repair. Let us look at a different historical trend involving the exclusion list. Most luxury service contracts are not bumper to bumper, despite what the salesperson might suggest. They are typically divided into powertrain coverage or stated component coverage. In a stated component contract, if a part is not explicitly listed in the fine print, it is not covered. In the era of the modern rolling computer, this is a massive liability. A contract might cover the engine and transmission but explicitly exclude the infotainment screen, the LED headlight modules, the adaptive cruise control sensors, and the entire wiring harness. As we have established, these electronic components are often the most expensive items to replace on a 2026 luxury vehicle. If your $3,000 digital instrument cluster goes dark, and it is not on the list, the contract provides zero financial relief. Consider the case study of Sarah, a small business owner in Denver, Colorado. Sarah's 2021 luxury SUV suffers a failure of the air suspension compressor. Her service contract covers the compressor, but the fine print excludes the airbags and the height sensors. The dealership discovers that a leaking airbag caused the compressor to overwork and eventually burn out. Because the excluded part, the airbag, was the root cause of the failure, the administrator denies the claim for the covered part, the compressor. This is known as the consequential damage clause, and it is one of the most effective ways for service contract providers to avoid high-value payouts on luxury vehicles. The financial reality of the United States market is that the house always wins in the service contract game. The premiums are calculated using massive actuarial databases that predict exactly when a vehicle will fail. The price of the contract is almost always set higher than the statistical likelihood of the repair costs, plus a significant margin for marketing, commissions, and corporate profit. For the average consumer, it is often more financially efficient to take the $5,000 that would have been spent on a contract and place it in a dedicated, high-yield automotive emergency fund. This allows the owner to retain total control over the repair process, choose the best parts, and select the most qualified independent technicians without having to beg a third-party administrator for authorization. However, even with a robust emergency fund and a dedicated maintenance schedule, there is one final, overwhelming cost associated with luxury auto repair that no amount of money can truly fix. It is the cost of time and the erosion of utility. When a luxury vehicle breaks down in 2026, it is not just a financial burden, it is a logistical nightmare. Because these cars are so specialized, the parts often take weeks to arrive from overseas, and the number of technicians qualified to work on them is shrinking every year. This leads to a phenomenon known as the luxury graveyard, where perfectly beautiful high-end vehicles sit in the back of repair shops for months at a time, waiting for a single microscopic chip or a specialized hydraulic seal. As we move into the final stages of our masterclass, we have to ask the ultimate question. If the repairs are this expensive, the software is locked, and the parts are backordered, is there any scenario where owning a used luxury car in America actually makes sense? Or are we witnessing the end of the dream of the affordable high-end second-hand car? The answer depends on a very specific, often overlooked metric that determines whether your car is an asset or a liability, and it has nothing to do with the price you paid at the dealership. That metric is the residual value to repair cost ratio, a mathematical threshold that separates the strategic automotive enthusiast from the financially devastated victim. In the United States automotive market of 2026, the depreciation curve of a luxury vehicle is a jagged cliff, while the price of specialized components remains a flat, elevated plateau. When these two lines cross, the vehicle officially transforms from a prestigious asset into a predatory liability. To understand this, we must look at the historical trends of flagship luxury sedans and high-performance SUVs over the last 7 years. A vehicle that originally carried a manufacturer-suggested retail price of $110,000 in 2019 might only command a trade-in value of $18,000 today in 2026. However, the replacement cost for its proprietary night vision camera or its active shutter grille assembly has not depreciated at all. In many cases, due to inflation and supply chain consolidation, these parts are more expensive now than when the car was brand new. Imagine a driver named Alex living in suburban Los Angeles in the year 2026. Alex drives a 2019 flagship European sedan, a vehicle that remains an absolute masterpiece of comfort and technology. To the neighbors, Alex appears to be driving a six-figure car. To the bank, the car is worth $22,000. One afternoon, the car enters limp mode, a software-governed state that restricts engine power to prevent further damage. The diagnosis at a specialized independent shop reveals a failure in the high-voltage integrated starter generator and the associated lithium-ion 48-volt battery pack. Because this is a proprietary, first-generation mild hybrid system, there are no aftermarket alternatives. The parts alone cost $9,000. The labor involves dropping the transmission to access the starter generator, adding another $4,000 to the bill. For Alex, the math is devastating. He is being asked to spend $13,000 to repair a vehicle that is only worth $22,000. This is the 60% threshold, a point at which most financial advisors and historical trends suggest the vehicle is a total loss. If Alex pays for the repair, he still owns a $22,000 car. He has effectively sunk nearly the entire remaining equity of the vehicle into a single mechanical failure. This is the moment when luxury auto repair ceases to be worth the cost. The potential outcomes of this decision are almost always negative. If he fixes it, another $5,000 failure in the air suspension 6 months later would mean he has spent more on repairs than the car is worth on the open market. This is how high-end vehicles end up in the luxury graveyard, sitting in the back of independent shops with perfectly fine leather interiors and beautiful paint, but with mechanical bills that exceed their market reality. This leads us to the critical concept of the utility to repair cost analysis. In 2026, you must calculate the cost of the repair not against the value of the car, but against the cost of a replacement monthly payment. If the $13,000 repair Alex faces keeps the car on the road for another 3 years without further major issues, he is effectively paying $361 a month for a flagship luxury experience. Compared to the $1,500 monthly payment of a brand new 2026 equivalent, the repair seems like a bargain. But this logic is a trap because it assumes no further failures. Historical trends show that in complex luxury machines, one major system failure is often a leading indicator that the other high-stress components, the turbochargers, the cooling system, and the electronic modules, are also reaching the end of their engineered service life. Furthermore, we must address the hidden cost of downtime in the current United States landscape. In 2026, the logistics of luxury repair have become a primary factor in the value proposition. Because of the extreme specialization of parts, a single failed steering rack for a British luxury SUV might have to be shipped from a central warehouse in Europe. In current case studies, it is not uncommon for luxury owners to wait 6 to 12 weeks for a single backordered component. During this time, the owner is still paying for insurance and registration on a vehicle they cannot drive. If Alex has to rent a standard economy car for 12 weeks at $60 a day while waiting for his $13,000 repair, he has added an additional $5,000 to his total cost. The opportunity cost of time and the logistical friction of specialized repair are metrics that the average consumer rarely factors into their initial purchase. This environment has created a new class of automotive selection in the United States. Savvy buyers in 2026 are looking for the simplified luxury outliers. These are vehicles that offer the prestige and comfort of a high-end brand, but utilize a drivetrain shared with a more common, high-volume model. Consider a luxury brand owned by a massive Japanese or American parent company. If the luxury SUV uses the same engine, transmission, and braking system as a mass-market pickup truck or a standard family crossover, the repair cost stays anchored to the mass-market economy. You are getting the double-pane glass, the premium leather, and the superior sound insulation, but when the water pump fails, you are paying for a part that was produced in the millions, not the thousands. The potential outcomes for these hybrid pedigree vehicles are significantly more favorable, as parts are stocked at every local auto parts store and labor can be performed by any ASE-certified technician without proprietary dealership software. However, even the most simplified luxury vehicle in 2026 is subject to the rising cost of specialized fluids and environmental compliance. The United States has implemented increasingly strict regulations on the disposal of synthetic lubricants, refrigerants, and high-voltage battery components. When you take your vehicle in for a repair, you are now paying environmental surcharges that did not exist a decade ago. A standard air conditioning recharge on a luxury vehicle now utilizes R-1234YF refrigerant, which can cost 10 times more than the older R-134A. If your luxury car has a dual-zone or quad-zone climate system, the sheer volume of this expensive gas required to fill the system can turn a simple leak repair into a $1,000 event before a single wrench is turned. As we analyze these historical trends and the shifting economic landscape, we find ourselves at the most important crossroads of this masterclass. We have looked at the dealership markups, the digital firewalls, the engineering traps, and the depreciation cliffs. But there is one final, almost invisible force that determines whether you will be the person who enjoys the luxury experience for a fraction of the cost, or the person who goes bankrupt trying to keep a badge in the driveway. It is a psychological phenomenon that the automotive marketing industry has spent billions of dollars perfecting. It is the reason why millions of Americans continue to buy these cars despite knowing the risks we have discussed today. We are about to look at the prestige paradox and the specific step-by-step strategy for 2026 that allows you to own the car of your dreams without becoming a permanent resident of the service department waiting room. But to do that, you must be willing to do something that 99% of luxury car owners are too afraid to do. You have to stop caring about the one thing the manufacturer wants you to value most. And that single shift in perspective will save you more money than any independent mechanic ever could. The one thing the manufacturer desperately wants you to value above all else is the pristine, uninterrupted record of dealership service stamps in your digital maintenance log. In the United States in the year 2026, this is the ultimate psychological anchor used to justify the astronomical costs we have dissected throughout this masterclass. The industry has spent decades cultivating the idea that a luxury vehicle serviced anywhere other than an authorized flagship facility is somehow compromised, dangerous, or significantly less valuable. But historical trends in the secondary market tell a completely different story. For a vehicle that is 5, 7, or 10 years old, the savvy second-hand buyer is no longer looking for a dealership stamp. They are looking for a thick folder of receipts from a reputable, brand-specific independent specialist who actually knows the names of the car owners. To save thousands of dollars, you must fundamentally reject the prestige of the dealership waiting room and embrace the strategic reality of independent expertise. Consider a case study involving a professional named Kevin living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Kevin owns a 2021 luxury Grand Tourer. For 5 years, he has religiously taken the car to the dealership for every single service, paying a premium of roughly 40% over independent rates. He does this because he believes the potential outcomes of having a full dealer service history will result in a significantly higher resale value. By 2026, Kevin has spent an estimated $18,000 on routine maintenance and minor repairs at the dealership. When he finally goes to sell the car, he discovers that the market value for his vehicle is $35,000. An identical model with a perfect service record from a high-end independent shop sells for $33,000. Kevin spent $18,000 to protect $2,000 in residual value. The math simply does not support the dealership loyalty model once the vehicle leaves its initial lease period. The first step in your 2026 luxury ownership strategy is the deployment of the Forensic Pre-Purchase Inspection, or PPI. In an era where cars are rolling computer networks, a visual inspection is virtually worthless. Imagine, if you will, a buyer named Mike in New Jersey who is looking at a 2022 luxury SUV with a complex hybrid drivetrain. To the naked eye, the car is flawless. Mike, however, refuses to sign the title until he pays $350 for a 3-hour PPI at an independent shop that specializes exclusively in that brand. The technician does not just look for oil leaks. He performs a deep system scan of the vehicle's internal control modules. He discovers a series of stored, non-illuminated codes indicating a high-resistance fault in the secondary battery cooling circuit. This is a microscopic internal failure that has not yet triggered a dashboard warning light, but indicates a failing thermal management valve. The potential outcome of ignoring this would be a $12,000 battery pack replacement within the next 12 months. Mike spends $300 to save $12,000. This is the only way to safely navigate the high-stakes world of depreciated luxury. The second pillar of the 2026 strategy is the move from module replacement to component-level repair. As we have discussed, dealerships are trained to be parts changers. If a circuit board inside your entertainment system fails, they will quote you $5,000 for a complete new head unit. However, a growing sub-industry of specialized electronic technicians has emerged in the United States. Consider the case study of Linda in Florida. Her 2020 luxury sedan experienced a total blackout of the digital instrument cluster. The dealership quote was $6,400 for a new cluster and the associated coating. Linda, instead, found a component-level specialist who understood the specific hardware architecture of that brand. The technician identified a single $5 MOSFET transistor on the logic board that had succumbed to thermal fatigue. He desoldered the failed component, installed a high-temp industrial-grade replacement, and charged Linda $700 for the labor and expertise. Linda achieved the exact same functional outcome as the dealership's $6,000 solution for roughly 10% of the cost. To find these specialists, you must look for brand-specific tribal knowledge. In 2026, this means moving beyond general internet searches and into specialized owner forums and encrypted messaging groups where professional mechanics share technical service bulletins and reverse-engineered repair procedures. You are looking for the guy who only works on one specific engine family or one specific transmission type. These specialists often have access to a global network of high-quality, recycled parts and specialized diagnostic tools that allow them to perform repairs the dealership claims are impossible. They understand the historical trends of which plastic clips will break and which sensors can be cleaned instead of replaced. By aligning yourself with these specialists, you bypass the massive corporate overhead of the dealership and pay strictly for high-level mechanical talent. The third and final pillar is the exit strategy. You must view luxury vehicle ownership in the United States as a game of musical chairs played with a ticking financial time bomb. Historical trends show that modern luxury cars hit a massive wall of mechanical failure between the 80,000 and 100,000 mile marks. This is the zone where air suspension bags begin to dry rot, turbocharger seals begin to weep, and complex electronic modules begin to fail due to vibration and heat. To be a strategic owner, you must have a predefined exit point. If you purchase a vehicle at 40,000 miles, you should ideally be planning your sale by 75,000 miles. By exiting the vehicle before the second wave of major mechanical failures occurs, you pass the highest cost of ownership onto the next, less informed buyer while you have already enjoyed the prime years of the vehicle's utility and prestige. Is luxury auto repair worth the cost in the United States? The answer is a calculated yes, but only if you are willing to act as your own service manager. It is worth it for the safety of the advanced driver assistance systems, the comfort of the acoustic glass cabins, and the immense power of the over-engineered drivetrains. But it is only worth it if you strip away the artificial luxury tax imposed by the dealership model. If you treat the car like a business asset, calculating the PPI, utilizing component-level repair, and timing your exit, you can experience a $100,000 driving experience for the price of a standard economy car. The dream of affordable luxury is not dead. It has simply become a high-information game that requires a masterclass level of understanding to win. But even as you master the mechanical and digital complexities of these machines, there is a new shadow looming over the American luxury market. As we move closer to the end of the decade, the manufacturers are preparing a final, ultimate move that could make every strategy we have discussed today obsolete. They are moving toward a future where you don't even own the software that runs your brakes or your heated seats, and the right to repair might be legally overwritten by the right to subscribe. What happens when the hardware is fine, but the manufacturer decides to remotely deactivate your vehicle's most essential features because it has reached its official end-of-life date? That is the next great battle for the American driver, and it starts with a secret piece of legislation currently making its way through the halls of Washington that could change the definition of automotive ownership forever.